Okay, thank you everyone online and in person for your patience while we dealt with that. So we'll move into citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the village board during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject can be anything, whether on the agenda or not. The village board should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of the publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of the citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they are participating in a public hearing or if specifically allowed by a majority vote of the village board due to involvement in an agenda item. John? No. Mary? No. Okay. I will close citizen participation. All right, we did the consent agenda already, so we'll move on to miscellaneous business. Item 1, consider Excel Engineering's findings/proposal for municipal building. Hi, come on up.
So everyone remembers Dean from Excel Engineering.
Thanks for inviting me. Just to start off, we did have a crew down to, as part of this process, we had a crew come down and did some field measurements, investigated the existing HVAC system, and we also did a Matterport scan, although that is not a public, we're not going to make that public, but it is available to the village staff. Couple of things that have come up as part of this study was the administrative entrance, or the east entrance of the facility, was lacking in a few things. One of them is just helping with somebody not familiar with the facility, where to go. Just wayfinding was difficult. It's not real welcoming, and just making it easier not only for the users of the building but also the staff. So we looked at a number of things to address that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. So basically what we looked at doing is opening up that lobby as you come in, providing some windows and some signage along with, so it's obvious to where the users are, where they are to go, along with some additional new finishes and just to warm up that facility. Along with this alteration, we're also looking at creating some security windows so that the staff, in case there would be an intruder coming into the building, would have some safety behind these secure windows. Also, additional security systems that will allow them to notify all the users in the building that, hey, there is a problem, and some additional cameras so we can, obviously see what's going on. In your packet, I did create some photorealistic renderings. I kept them a little bit of gray tone just because I didn't want to get into colors, but it does give you a feel for kind of how that lobby will feel and be able to use. Also, along with this study, we looked at the HVAC system that we had. And currently that system is at the end of its useful life. And I believe there's been a lot of Band-Aids put on it to get it to where it's at today. Some of the things that we discovered when we did do, one of the things is that the zoning of the system, or what each unit, there's a number of, I believe there's 12 units, existing furnaces that are serving, and they're not serving like uses and like exposures. So they're, in some cases, those units are fighting each other. The other thing, too, that we thought was really curious was the fact that every unit is the same size. They just put them all in at one size. which leads us to believe that they were not sized properly, which means like a day like today, if the unit is too large to serve a space, it's going to have a really short run time, which means it's not going to dehumidify the building, which, if I understand, has been a problem with the building. There has been a slight amount of mold that has been found in the building. My understanding that between cleaning and the fact that there is dehumidification in the building has been taken care of. However, this process would, the new system that we're proposing would size the units properly, rezone the building so that like uses and like exposures would be together, so that we wouldn't be fighting each other and there'd be a lot more comfort in the building itself. But most importantly, if we put the right sized units, we'll have longer run times, and the system itself will be able to dehumidify the building rather than running a whole separate dehumidification system in the building. So with that proposal, we did put a budget together for that. And I don't want to bore you with all the details, but we did account for looking at putting that all together at about $560,000. We have an additional soft cost, which will include permit fees, engineering fees at 56, an FF&E charge, which would be the furniture, fixture, and equipment. The main items would be some lobby furniture, some artwork, and then also some wayfinding signage in that lobby area. And then we also added a contingency of $56,000 in there. The other thing that we've added is just a couple of alternates, whether you chose to take them or not, would be is we could add some additional stone veneer in the lobby area itself, just to give it a nice, warm, timeless feel. And then also some additional electronic signage that would help out with wayfinding. So with that, I will take any questions you might have.
I have a question about, you mentioned cameras. So are those cameras, I don't know if you got a chance to talk to Chief, are those going to be the same cameras that we're going to be using, or the proposal that you're using, Jeremy? Or are we going to?
So obviously, if we add any cameras, it would have to be integrated with our new system, right? So I did have a brief conversation with Dean about the fact that we just authorized some security measures. And so that's potentially some money that could come out of here. But if we did add some cameras with the reconfiguration, that they would be integrated with that existing system.
And we'd integrate door panel, access panels and things like that as well.
Anything we did security related from this point on would be integrated with our new system. That just makes the most sense.
You mentioned stone veneer. Are those renderings? Does that have stone veneer in it
It
right
does,
now?
yes.
So
Yes, sir.
that would be the optional stone veneer.
That's correct.
And in the electronic lighting, would that be like exits? Talk a little bit more about that.
The electronic signage would be kind of what you have now. When you walk into the lobby currently, there is I'll say a TV display, would be just, I'll say more and more of that. And again, that's something that we left as an alternate, not knowing if you really needed it with the new design.
So on the HVAC, I had some questions about when we have last talked about this, and so Jason, correct me if I'm misremembering here, but I know like when we talked about the unfinished area, in one of our challenges is that the walls don't go all the way up to the ceiling. So does this include like fixing that issue, or how does the rework in the HVAC address that gap there?
You want to grab that?
Sure. It does include, I mean, where the system itself is fighting itself is when we have, like in your rec area, those walls won't go all the way up. So now I have two systems that are really fighting each other. I'm not too much worried when, let's say like these walls here if they don't go all the way up, these two systems aren't going to be fighting each other because we're in this space. But because if if this ceiling wasn't here, those two systems would be fighting. So in our proposal, or in the budget that I created, we do have the open area, or the rec area, those walls going up and connecting to the roof deck. So those two areas wouldn't be fighting, but really not addressing any of the other walls going all the way up.
Right, because we have it's a drop ceiling, but
Correct.
but at least where, like you said, it's open, the costs here include finishing the wall all the way up.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I got about 12 questions, but I don't think I want to do them right here tonight because you guys will be here for another 45 minutes. So maybe if you'd like to, I could talk to Jason about it, or...
Do you want to hit the high, do you have some high points that you want to hit, though? Because, this is our opportunity to talk about it.
Well, I understand,
We're going to
Jason,
need some
but
direction
I don't want
coming out of
everybody
this.
scowling at me because I'm asking questions.
If you have, if you
I
have,
know.
if you have big picture questions about, whether we should do this or not, that's one thing. If you've got, technical questions, absolutely, we can talk about those on a sidebar, as they're developing specifications if we're going to move forward.
Most of them are, I just, as I'm reading through this, I just write notes in the column about, like you're talking about the HVAC ductwork, and for some reason, I know that when the village first came in here, I was called a request to come in and look at something, and I thought I remembered some ductwork that actually ran under the concrete in one area of this building somewhere. And I was wondering if you caught that.
I'm not sure I've seen that. You don't remember anything else about that?
It's been a long time.
Okay.
So,
that was maybe pre-remodel of '08.
That could very well be. I know there was a raised floor area, and then there was ductwork underneath.
The only thing I could think of is the server room.
yeah, it could have been electrical.
I was just concerned about mold.
So 40, I guess to Jason's question, conceptually, do you have concerns about this direction? And
No, I don't
plan?
have, no,
Okay.
I agree with the direction it's going. It's just I was looking at the plan and the way the new entry or the vestibule, whatever you want to call it, and I see the Public Works is off on the one side and the village offices are on the other, but it doesn't say anything about the building inspector. Is that going to be listed somewhere also with
Yeah,
Public Works?
He's still in Public Works, yes.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think on some of your really detailed type stuff, I think if you could find some time to sit with Jason and maybe Dean, if he's available, and just kind of run through, because obviously you're presenting us with an idea. You'll work out the detailed schematics for us in a formal agreement.
Yeah, we certainly will. Currently at this point, we've just done a cursory review of your HVAC system, and understanding what's there. We still will go through and, do the fine design on the HVAC system. One of the things that I know Jason and I talked about, as far as to address the mold issue, is that all the existing ducts that will get reused will get cleaned prior to the project being finalized.
And I also see you were going to reuse drain lines, but is it really, should we just put new drain lines in? Because a lot of times those drain lines in a long time, they'll get like a jelly mold crud inside and they get half blocked and they don't work the way they should.
I'd say, look, for very specific things like that, why don't you meet with these guys off? I guess I get a couple more higher level type things. So one is, you talked about some windows and other things, because it is pretty dark in that entrance lobby, because you really only have the doors as windows, quote unquote. So is there, I guess you said something about adding windows. Can you kind of talk through that a little bit?
I apologize if I was confusing. There really won't be any additional natural light into that space. I guess geometry it's just difficult to get natural light into that space. The windows, I guess I was referring to, were really the security windows that would be
At the counters.
at the counters, correct.
Could we explore like some sort of light tubes or something like that to get some more daylight in there?
I'm not a big fan of skylights, though. I mean, I just
Yeah,
feel
not
like
skylights, but yeah.
Sun tubes.
through like the sidewalls.
You put those on the roof, yeah.
They're called sun tubes.
Yeah, no, I.
And actually, in our facility up in Fond du Lac, we have a number of solar tubes. Personally, I'm not a big fan, and the reason I'm not is because if you look at the tube itself compared to if I put in an LED light of that same temperature, you really wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And secondly, I'm not a big fan of putting penetrations in the roof if I don't have to. So my suggestion is, and we can certainly, if that's the route we want to go, is put some light tubes in, I'm certainly happy to do that. But my suggestion would be is, let's spend a little bit, instead of putting a penetration in the roof, let's spend your money on additional lighting to make it feel warm and
Yeah,
inviting.
and that's fine, yeah, I'll let you guys design that, but just the more that we can focus on making that not as dark, and as you said, inviting when you come in.
Correct.
And, you talked about the digital signage, which I think is important. One of the other things that we're doing is we're starting to move things more online, and we do have members of the community who may not be as technically savvy as those. So we want to make, in my mind, I think we need to make sure that we have a space available for things like a kiosk, if we need to have a kiosk to say, hey, here, if it's an iPad or it's a little laptop or, whatever that is, so that people from the public can come in and transact that business in that way.
Okay.
So just something to think about in terms of electrical, but also just space planning.
Certainly, thank you.
I've got one other question. I noticed on the drawing of the overhead drawing of the new plan, right at the entryway, and when you come in to the village hall, there, you've got showing right here, the doors, but you have, there's two walls on the outside, one from the office and one from whatever that's going to be on the other side. Now I think it's the Park and Rec area. But I was telling Jason about this. Would it make sense, excuse me, I know that, people say, well, for security, we can put cameras out there, but as you know well, electronic stuff sometimes fails. But I'm wondering if it would make sense for us to put a couple of security windows in on each side outside the vestibule, so that if somebody in an office, if somebody hears something out there, all you gotta do is just go like that and look out the window. And that doesn't need any electronics.
Yeah, certainly I agree with your sentiment that, obviously a borrowed light is a lot more user-friendly than a camera. So that's certain, and it obviously with the geometry, I certainly think we have the ability to do that.
I'm just saying, it wouldn't have to be a huge one, but at least somebody could, if there's somebody out there pounding on a door, or there's something going on, you can look out to see if
that is.
If something necessitates calling the police, or if it's just somebody you should let in or whatever.
Certainly. Yeah, I think, and if I understand what you're saying correctly, if we can get, I'll say, a little bit more transparency right here and right here.
No, I'm talking about on the outside.
But so
Here?
And there.
Oh, okay. Well, this, and again,
If those front doors are locked
okay,
and somebody's out there pounding on the door,
gotcha. Okay.
So
I
is our,
guess- guess
so is
I-
our goal tonight to say, yes, it's time to move ahead? I was on this board when we bought the building, and to me, it was like buying an old house. You knew, you got it we got it for a good price, but we've been kicking this down the road for a long time. We're in a position to do something. I want us to move ahead. There's some details, yes, that need to get worked out, but it's like a conversation with my husband with remodeling. We could spend the rest of the night deciding what to do with the bathroom. I think it's time.
I was going to ask about the bathroom next.
Thank you. We knew the HVC was going to be an issue. And I have to think about what's in the best interest of all the people who are working out of this. I think it's long overdue. I'd like to move ahead with this, my thought, and maybe if there's a few people that with the technical things, I don't know about taking down walls. It's not my forte. Leave that to another discussion and let other, maybe a small group to discuss and move ahead tonight.
I concur.
Yeah, how do we, there is a gap, though. You get 678,000 in funds, and the total is probably, what, 725-ish? So how do we cover the rest of that?
You do have money in unassigned capital projects. I mean, obviously, this will decrease your fund balance, but you have money that's designated specifically for this purpose and for this building. Unassigned fund balance at the end of 2022 was $588,000, but we also received our funding for the dam grant this year, which increased that by $400,000. So we would just take that from the unassigned fund balance.
Dean, can you just talk about, so the numbers you've provided, where you feel those are in today's world?
Jason, that's a really good question because, obviously in today's world is difficult. And part of it is that I want to see this project happen just as much as everybody at the table does. So I didn't want to be, too high and be very conservative. But again, on the other end of it, I'm going to be the one at the table when all of a sudden this comes in at, 800. And so I did my best to make this number as accurate as I could. But again, where's inflation going to be when this bids in January or February? I can't answer that, but I really believe this is the best I can do right now with what I know.
And the challenge here too is I've looked at this thinking, you guys might say, okay, what can we cut out of this thing? And I don't, because of the package, I don't think there is much we can cut out. Obviously, we don't, veneers, things like that stone veneers can be cut out. Electronic signage can be cut out, but I understand. But as far as the HVAC and moving the walls, it all really needs to happen together.
So I would say, as long as, it sounds like staff are in favor of the design changes. Obviously, to Mary's point, you all are the ones who work here day in and day out. There's the safety concerns, so as long as that's being addressed, my opinion is, and I don't know if we need a motion for this, but that we move forward, get some, write this up formally, get some bids, start that process. And I guess my last question is just going to be, we do have a busy year next year with a presidential election. What, after looking at this, if we start according to I'm looking here at the memo, we have a timeline. I mean, how doable do you think that is?
I guess with the type of project this is, this project is very doable as far as putting that timeline together. I don't know that I see any hurdles at this point, and obviously the biggest issue is going to be, and I know Jason and I talked about this. Basically, you're going to give the contractor the building during the construction. To do it in phases, it's just going to end up costing you more money, and I'm not suggesting that you would do that. So the big question is going to be let's say if we started construction in, let's say we start construction in January, so we go from January to, I don't know, the end of April, middle of April. How much of an issue is that for your staff? And I guess maybe Jason or Eileen can really speak to that, but I know we did talk about that was going to be doable, even though.
Doesn't matter when we do it, it's going to be an inconvenience, right? I mean, so obviously, as staff, we've talked about this. The plan is to set up temporary offices in meeting room A. And as far as my staff's going to have a fair amount of time involved in this, moving computers, desks, things like that. So really, probably the best time of year for us to be doing it is in the colder months. So. There is the potential for maybe a February election, which, that could be a fly in the ointment, but it's.
Absolutely an April one.
We know that. So we'll just have to roll with it if that's what happens.
But
I don't see a better time of year, let's put it that way.
I got to ask though, Jason, according to what you're saying, sir, you're saying it's only going to take 3 months for this project? Because you were saying the end of January to April.
That's what I believe the.
3 months?
Yeah.
Really?
So what we're showing here is starting construction in early January. The timeline that's laid out in the memo, January 8th, start construction, potentially.
Okay.
And to me, the biggest, I mean, there's a lot of different things that need to come together. The biggest hurdle that I see with any kind of schedule is how quickly can we get furnaces? How quickly can we get, security equipment? But again, I believe, looking at it, that we're looking at if I'm looking at furnaces, I think we can get furnaces within, 10 to, 8 to 10 weeks. So I think there's a lot of, we're not looking at specialty rooftop units or anything like that. We're looking at standard furnaces for this type of project. I don't see a lot of long lead time items that we're going to be using, other than perhaps the security system.
Did you want me to even bother then to contact Jason about the other questions, since we were going to start with this right away?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, okay,
we still-
I'm just checking, that's all.
So next steps, if we get the thumbs up tonight, we'll have to work with Dean to get the bidding documents prepared, essentially, to be able to put it on the street for bids.
So I think
if
that's
you've
where
got
the
some-
detail needs to be.
That's kind of my question. If you're going to get bid documents, I think I'd want to at least look at this first before you go to that, in case any changes got to be made.
Absolutely. And I've already provided some of your initial feedback to them, so.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve moving forward and have staff work with Dean and Excel to develop the bid documents.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Dean. All right. Item 2, East Troy, McQuanago Multi-Use Path. Item A, consideration of recommendation to approve Strand Associates task order for the TAP grant application related to the East Troy McQuanago Multi-Use Path. You see Eileen's memo there to the board. Any questions?
I'll make a motion that we approve Strands Associates task order with the village portion being paid for by future capital projects fund balance.
Second?
Okay, any discussion?
How much, sorry, how much was that? For how much?
It's for $2,700.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, consideration of updated MOU with the town of East Troy and the village of McQuanago. And again, there is a memo here.
I'll make a motion to approve the MOU subject to minor modifications requested by other municipalities. Any significant modifications will need to come back to the village board.
I will second that.
Okay. Any discussion on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, presentation by Natural Resource Invocations, Andy Nelson, post-construction evaluation of the former impoundment. Andy, glad to have you here. Thanks for coming.
All right. So thanks for the opportunity to be here this evening. It's been a pleasure to help and observe the construction and restoration out at the Mill Pond Park. And just talking with Jason, we thought it was a good time to step back and look at the project as a whole and see how it has performed in terms of attaining the objectives that I understand were laid out at the beginning of the project. So just as a refresher, my role in this project has been to assist Lynch and Associates on the ecological design of the project, as well as participate in observing the construction and providing some intermittent input on the design and construction adjustments as needed along the way. So just as a reflection on things, this project has taken a little bit of time, both on the front end and deliberating of exactly what should happen and what everybody wanted to happen out there. And that image is reflective, and I believe it's an actual image from this project area before the project began. And so things have changed quite a bit. So at a high level, we've removed the dam, which was a public safety issue, and at that time, there was vast growth of cattails on both banks, and really it was a fairly impenetrable area. It was well used by wildlife, but not particularly well used by the public at that point. And because the sediment in the impoundment was very soft, it had an unstable channel, meaning it was moving all over, downcutting. A lot of sediment was getting moved around and flowing downstream. And as I said, it just wasn't meeting the needs of the public as well as the adjacent private landowners who had interest in that area as well. So at the get-go, there was 4 major objectives that the project entailed, which was to, number one, stabilize that stream bed and banks so that we would stop the flow of sediment gushing downstream and create a hard bank that you could approach and utilize the waterway and so on. There was strong interest in replacing the cattails and phragmites, the tall vegetation that was out there, with more desired vegetation communities. The hope was that there would be some space created to provide public recreation opportunities, as well as restore the uses on the private lands, particularly on the north side of the channel. So how did we do? Well, as of today, and I'm sure many of you have been out there and seen it, the stream bed is well formed and its banks are stabilized. I think the design and construction were very effective at creating a well-incised channel that streams by their nature are dynamic. It's going to shift and adjust itself over time, but as a practical matter, this is probably as stable of a system as we could hope for at this point. It's been tested by some fairly significant storm events. Excuse me. Excuse me. So I think we're in a good spot, and the design of the stream channel was very thoughtfully put together so that there would be a variety of water depths and flow speeds, so that there are places that are scoured clean and there's stone exposed on the bed, gravel, rocks, etc. Those are good places for aquatic life, insects, bugs, that sort of thing. There's deeper pools with softer sediment areas. Those are good places for aquatic plants to grow and amphibians to do what they do and spend the winter. They like deeper water for insulation, etc. So you've got a nice mix of pools and riffles out there, and it's kind of postcard worthy, really, when you view it from the roadway looking back to the west over the dam. So I think it's very aesthetic. So as I said, these things are not etched in stone. They will need to be monitored over time, And as you go forward, there are some habitat elements that I think can be infused into this project to increase its ecological value as well as its recreational values, and I'll touch on some of those as we go along. The vegetation has changed quite a bit out there. Whereas you may have needed a machete to get from point A to point B in the past, these days it's much easier to stroll along the turf lawn areas, as well as some of these more natural areas have a nice mix of native grasses. The forbs, or the wildflowers, are a little more muted right now. I think that's something to monitor over time. I think that as a park area progresses and matures, there will probably be interest in planting some trees and some of those wildflowers to augment what has been established so far. There's always a need to kind of keep your eye out on invasive species. That might just be some weed whacking or spot mowing in the short run. I think that genie is mostly stuffed in the bottle for the time being. So yeah, public recreation, depending on how the channel lays and how the deed rights on the north side look, there's roughly 15 acres of new public green space that is out there for picnicking, games, etc. From a dollars and cents standpoint, that's extremely valuable real estate and is going to provide benefits for a long time. The stream banks are easily and safely accessible at this point for fishing, wading, bird watching. There's a lot of wildlife use out there, so it's a good place for passive recreation activities. As I said, if you go to a natural stream in the North Woods that's untouched and so on, one of the key elements that you'll see in that stream bed is a lot of woody debris, logs, sticks, branches, overhanging trees, and that sort of thing. And that because this reach of stream is new, a lot of that woody structure is lacking. So I think that you can increase the carrying capacity of the stream quite a bit if we can infuse some woody habitat out there. There's lots of ways to do that both give the fish what they need and not really interfere too much on the recreation or aesthetic side of things. I always say that fish do, in fact, grow on trees. So you need a few in the water there. I think it'd be a great opportunity for like a scout troop or an Eagle Scout to do some nest structures out there, bluebird houses, wood duck houses, those kinds of things would be a real hit, as well as some of the plantings I already touched on. On the private side of things, there's probably about 10 acres of land that has been restored to private landowners, particularly on the north side there. They've got safe access down to the water. I know that the residents had a lot of concerns about the vegetation. I think those have been mostly allayed by the changes out there. And you can see already people are using these areas for extensions of their property and different recreation and so on. So I think just down the road, that's going to be a cooperative management effort with the village and the landowners to maintain that area in an acceptable way. So yeah, I think that to get the most out of these areas, there's an opportunity to shape what the future vegetation looks like. There's some nice woodlots to the south right now. I think some isolated plantings, some mass plantings of trees and shrubs out there might look nice. An edible component, bringing in some wild berries and things like that, creates interest and opportunities as well. there's an area on the south side of the stream where there's sort of a small wetland pond, if you will, that drains down to the main channel. And that area has potential for northern pike spawning, as well as giving the spawning a boost. Those kinds of areas can be stocked with northern pike fry in the springtime. They're little buggers. And when they mature to about 3 or 4 inches, they kind of get a little wanderlust, and they can swim down that trickle and join the main stream and so on. So that's a possibility as well. I think you've already got the trails and walkways started, so I think that's great. And in the future, there's potential for community gardens and that sort of thing, whether they're annuals or perennials. And I've touched on it a little bit with Jason. As far as this habitat stuff is concerned, there are various grants available for those kinds of things, for fish habitat and wildlife plantings as well. So that's something that, if there's interest, we can explore and pursue as needed. So just before I wrap it up, I guess I would like to say congratulations to the village. This is a big project that I know had a lot of choices and a lot of angst from some folks, from even whether the dam stays or goes and how it looks after. And a lot of projects that a village board undertakes are 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, maybe 20-year kinds of projects. This one is multi-generational. You've really done some good work here, and it's going to shape the face of the community for probably the next 100 years, maybe longer. So I think you've laid a good foundation. There's a few things that you can do to tweak it and polish it along the way. And it does need a little bit of care and feeding, but this is a good project, and you should be very pleased and very proud to be a part of it. So congratulations.
Thank you, Andy.
You bet. If there's any questions, I can.
Does anybody have any questions for Andy?
Oh, thanks a lot for your help.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your guidance through this. I know you've given us lots of presentations on this, and I think, that showed, to your point about some of the angst that was there, that this board is interested in preserving now, this new habitat that we have for not just, like you said, us, but future generations to be able to use as well. I did want to point out, and Jason maybe could talk a little bit about just two things on this topic. One is there's a handout he has here. This is the punch list of things that were and things that are done according to Lynch and RLP, and then there were some that we have not addressed, and I think some of these were things that we couldn't get to because it didn't get cold enough last winter, and may not get cold enough this winter, if the long-term forecast is what I've seen. So there are still some things out there. This, Andy's presentation is not a, we're done, and to your point too, there's continued work that we will talk about with budgets, and I think the idea for grants and anything you could do to help us on grants, free money is always nice. So if we can get some grants there for wildlife or plantings, and I like the idea of things like scout troops and others who could. We also have the former Lake Association, which is still active, so they may be of interest of the property owners there. And then also for any property owners that are listening, we do still need to have a conversation, and we'll have that in the coming months, about the property rights there and memorializing those agreements and how that's going to work. So yeah, this is not we're all done. Congratulations. Never talk about it again. This is going to be a big part of what we continue to work on.
Sure.
Thank you. Any questions for Jason on the handout?
I have one. It's not necessarily, Jason, how is the dewatering going out there? How is the land stability?
So it's drying / shrinking. As it dries out, we've noticed, Tim and I walked it on Friday, And there's some areas where, you know, it's just simply opened up because it's drying. There is still, on certain areas of the stream bed, there's still soft spots where it's kind of slumped off. But other than that, it is, you know, for the most part, it's being mowed by adjacent property owners. There is some areas that don't, and then Public Works goes out there and just mows it. But for the most part, it is dewatering very well.
I guess I was just going to ask, though, about that, because I remember when we first lowered that, there was very dangerous. People would try walking out there, and they would sink up to their waist. But that's not anywhere near like that now, right?
No, the root structure of, you know, the plantings out there have really helped to firm that up. Again, it's dewatered, so that's solidifying things. Like I say, there are still a few areas down along the water's edge where, you know, especially if we get a heavy rain and the banks swell, that it can be soft.
Andy, you've probably talked with Tim and Jason about, we have that high pH discharge that we're hunting down the source of. Any concerns about that from a wildlife standpoint from what you've seen?
No, not really. I mean, I don't think it's an ideal situation. I think you're correct to try and investigate that. But I haven't seen evidence of any deleterious effects out there. It's not killing anything. There's no stain on the land that is, you know, wiped out because of this. I would want to understand it and eliminate it if you can.
All right, well, that's, I think, it. Thank you
All right.
very much, and again, thanks for your help.
Yeah, thank you. Look forward to next time we visit.
I think I saw a swan out there yesterday. So. No, I don't know. It could have been a flamingo for, you know. All right. Item 4, consider proposal from Benchmark Landscaping for street trees on South Executive Drive. There's a memo there from Jason and his recommendation.
Of course, I have a question. Jason, and I'm all for it. I don't see any problem with it. The only question I had is the placement of the trees next to the road. Are they going to place them in a decent enough space so when they start aging, that the trucks are still going to have clear run through?
The plan is to put the trees in the exact same locations as they are today. And yes, they've got some setbacks. It's essentially the same thing as in the old park. And you do have to keep them trimmed up for sure. But we want to keep them within the right of way, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal from Benchmark for $99,2450 for the tree replacement in the industrial park.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item 5, consideration of grants for the Highway 120 multi-use trail. Different trail that we're talking about here. Tim is here to talk through that.
Thank you. So back, I guess probably early spring, maybe a little before that, you guys authorized us to pursue 2 different grants for the trail from Mill Pond Park, where it terminates today, down to Honey Creek Road, and then terminating at South Executive Drive, which is the new business park. So it would provide access to the lofts, to Honey Creek Apartments, et cetera, as well as to the new business park. So people could get from there, mostly probably more the residential side, but get all the way downtown via trails or sidewalks, whereas today we see them walking down Honey Creek Road or down Highway 120, which is not an ideal situation. So at that time, you guys authorized us to go after 2 grants. One was the DNR stewardship grant, which we had pursued previously. At one point gotten a call, hey, we think we're going to award this to you. Then that was pulled back and that money was reallocated. As well as the DOT TAP grant, which is the new bill funding, which is the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is the infrastructure law the feds passed. So we pursued both. And in this case, we were awarded both, which is great news. The problem is we can't accept both, so you've got to decide which to accept. Now, in my mind, there's pluses and minuses to both. DNR stewardship grant, local control, it's very similar to the DNR dam removal grant we just completed, where you get the work done, it's got to be publicly bid, it's completely local control on our timeline, doing it as a normal municipal project. That grant is a 50-50 grant app, so 50% state funds, 50% local funds, local match. The other grant program is the DOT TAP grant, which runs through the DOT processes. So there's a little more red tape. It's probably at least a year, maybe plus in design, getting through all the processes that DNR or DOT makes you do. Given this project size, it's likely that it would be let by DOT. So it would be a very similar project process to what we're dealing with or working through right now on the Highway 20 project, where it's controlled by the state, which had some pluses and minuses. The nice thing about the DOT TAP grant is an 80-20 grant. That's a definite positive. So that's where really the positives and minuses are. I could really make an argument for either. One of the nice things about the stewardship grant is you could be having a trail to use, and the next year we'd have a trail, and we'd get that in use a lot faster so that we don't see moms walking their kids on strollers down Highway 120, which is not a good situation. But I also can see, hey, there may be some economic benefits to the DOT grant. Now, we don't know, because it's really tough to do apples and oranges. Our DOT grant application, we inflated by 7% per year for 3 years because on the application itself, because we knew we had to help cover additional costs for what the inflation was going to do. So you look at the DOT TAP, and we're saying it's a $1.2 million project versus a $900,000 project in the stewardship grant. Well, it's the same project, same funds, except it's 3 years later, and there's more work to do, especially as it relates to DOT design type stuff. You know, a DNR stewardship grant, your design costs, I'll say roughly is $50,000. If you're DOT-wise, you're 100 plus. Now, you're only paying 20% versus 50, so that starts to even out. But you have to understand that you're going to spend, there'll be more dollars spent going the DOT route than there would be the DNR stewardship. The other thing I kind of like about the DOT or the DNR grant is we're talking about building a success in grants. And if we were to successfully complete using the DNR stewardship grant, it would behoove us to go after the next grant to take the trail from there out to Town Line Road along the existing, or now the creek here that we just talked about today. What's that? No, Town Line going west, along the new creek. If we start getting that program, it starts to set up very nicely for continually completing one grant, getting the next, and building upon that. The DOT TAP grant is a nice program, but it's going to be here the next 5 years, probably 4 years now, and that program's going to go away. I don't see the feds giving that kind of money out again. So it's a lot to weigh, and that's why I wrote the memo the way I did. There's pluses and minuses to both. There really is. So I guess if you have any questions on that, I'd love to get peppered with them and see if I can answer them.
So, looking at this, so 450 versus 297, so $150,000 difference. And so if we pay an extra $150,000, we could get it done next year. But if we save $150,000 or we spend $300,000, you're saying it could take 3 years?
Yeah,
3 to 5?
that would be planned for 2026 construction instead of 2024, so 2 years additional.
Okay. Right.
And then the question is what happens with inflation? And my crystal ball's broken.
So with the stewardship grant, we're saying the project is, in today's dollars, we're thinking we're gonna get it done for 900? That includes design?
It includes design, but if you recall, we have probably 30% plans done already.
Okay.
So it's been designed, not to DOT standards, it'd be a completely new design if you go DOT route.
So obviously, the DOT grant is substantially more dollars, but what you're saying is we're gonna have to wait 3 years to be able to do it. So I know we have to design that in '24, and then construct, we can construct in '25, I think, can't we? I mean,
Possibly. If you get through all the DOT approvals, if you get through
Right.
all the red tape,
right.
that's an
If you
aggressive
don't
time.
get the right bidding cycle, then it could get kicked out to the next construction
And-
season.
And
I mean, it's just
it's
hard
not,
to.
it's not to say you can't get to do the DOT red tape that fast, but they're also taking a ton of projects right now and trying to push them through. And you get it through that fast, I wouldn't promise it.
We had the same discussion when we looked at the road work and the grant opportunities there, right? When we looked at what, Energy Drive and Steeple or Sterling and, all of those that we were looking at, and I don't think we got any of those.
No.
But we had that same discussion of, you're beholden to the feds and how they're going to do things, and they're going to act as the bank. So I guess, Jason, what does, if we did the stewardship grant, if we did that, what, does our '24 budget contemplate spending that?
I don't remember now what we have in there for this. I don't know. I have to look at that.
I did get a chance to open it. He had asked me, and I said, ask Jason, maybe he remembers, because I couldn't remember. Okay, so it looks like for 2025, it was being funded from fund balance reserves, future capital projects for 258,367. And in 2024, we had 39,000 in there. So that must have been for the design in
Correct.
24, and 25 was for the construction.
So that was the 20% design, though.
Yeah.
So my opinion is we need to figure out the budget piece, but setting that aside for a second, the thing that we're always struggling with is lack of control. And the stewardship grant gives us that control. We get to use our design, work with our people, our engineers, the way we want to structure it, feed into what we just talked about with Andy. But I think the hurdle we got to clear is figuring out how do you make this work budgetarily.
So the stewardship, we have to do an outlay of 900,000 for next year, right? Because we don't get paid until after it's completed, right?
I believe, and actually you can do draws as you go.
Okay.
Typically, we've done it at the end, but I think you can
But
do
I
some
mean,
draws.
it's 2024. If we're going to complete it in '24, then it's
Correct.
900. So then the TAP grant, when do we have to, so it's $300,000. When would we pay that? Is that after, or
I
is it
believe
next
that's,
year?
I believe that's
Yeah, they
after.
act as the bank, so then we would reimburse when it gets to the end of the project. We'd
Okay.
reimburse them as
Okay.
opposed to the other way around.
So no money out, no outlay next year? Okay.
I like the idea about building a rapport with the DNR, though, on some of these grants, because of the fact that we're going to be having other ones come up, like Tim said, with other projects.
Well, I mean, again, the dam removal was a DNR grant, and so what we're talking about here is, they wanted to return the stream to its natural approach, and that's their whole position on a lot of these. So, yeah, help us continue to, go down the path of improving this for everyone.
And that's a pretty fun story to tell, especially with photos. The way that it looks now, I mean, to say, here's what we had, here's what we have now, here's what we envision, I think that's a really nice project to sell to DNR.
If we did the stewardship grant, though, do we have to do this in '24, or do we have the opportunity to do it in '25?
You have more time.
Okay. I think we ought to say, I guess, in my opinion, is that we would go forward on the stewardship grant and then let staff, you work with staff to figure out what's the right budgetary timing of this?
So either way, Tim, right, we would still be looking to design in '24, because there isn't time to pull this thing together for bidding for '24 construction. So we would probably design, which we said we have 30, how much, 39?
Jason,
And-
it's October.
They've
We
got-
have 30% plans.
They
We
got a lot done already.
have a lot done. There's no reason we couldn't pull this together to bid similar timeline as School Street.
Okay, I'm just thinking about it from a budgetary standpoint, I guess.
For budgetary, yeah, if you don't wanna spend
If-
the money,
if
that's
maybe
true,
we're
but-
not, we
but-
don't need to worry about it.
but
you-
engineering-wise-
You think there's time to design it yet and be able to have it on the street first of the year for next year's construction season?
15th of the year. Yeah.
All right, so let me just turn this around. We talked about the DNR things, and you're probably the only one here that can answer this question, Tim, but is there any downside to telling the DOT no? I don't know.
Well, you guys authorized a grant to go after for the trail to McGuanago. Is that viewed negatively?
That's all I'm at,
I don't know.
Does that have some bearing on that?
I
don't know.
wouldn't think so, but
I would say we would prefer their input on a larger scale project like that than this one.
I mean, I will tell you, understanding the DOT way is not a lot of fun. I've already started all the training and the hoops that you have to jump through to do this, and it certainly is, to Tim's point, is a lot more red tape. But you look at those two dollar amounts, and there's a big difference. So obviously, there's a reason for that.
That other trail, though, is going to be a multi-jurisdictional trail, and that would help with the involvement of the DOT.
I'm just asking the question out loud, I guess, that's all.
No, I like the idea of trying to see what we can do budget-wise to go for the stewardship grant. I'd rather stick with the DNR if we could. Granted, it's going to be a few more dollars, but I think in the long run, we might be better off if we can get more easily in line for other projects through this.
Tim, when do you have to have an answer back to them by?
Well, it's more from the standpoint of we would need to be moving on this pretty quick.
Well, there's two
Obviously, we got to
answers.
figure out the budget piece, and, we should be able to figure all that out by next meeting, and Tim could have us a proposal, and we could, I think we have enough time to do that, if that's where you're going with that.
That's where I'm going with it.
I don't think the budget piece is going to be extremely difficult because that was being funded from fund balance. So I think shifting the years is not going to be extremely difficult. It wasn't coming from tax levy.
Well, since it's not coming from tax levy, are you comfortable with if we made a decision in proceeding, or do you want to run the numbers and come back at the next meeting?
I think let's get a proposal from Tim, and then it gives us a little time to look at budget and bring that all back next time. How's that sound?
that works for me.
We know what we're talking about then.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for helping explain apples and oranges for us.
Did my best. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. Hey, we still get to talk about grants and trails. Resolution 2023-18, Support Transportation Alternatives Program, TAP application for East Troy / McQuanago Multi-Use Path, application cycle 2024 through 2028.
And this is just one of those final things that we have to do in order to qualify. So I'll move that we approve Resolution 2023-18.
I will second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to reports. Item 1, Emergency Services, 8:15. Any questions for Jason?
I just had a comment here on, I think it was the first one, where you said the ambulance staff they're tired. I don't know if you get any, are they still tired? Well, they're always tired. Yeah, okay.
We're trying to get some part-time staff in there to alleviate some of that, so we're still working through some of those issues, but the call volume came down a little bit, so we got a little bit of a break, but
Jason, how do you allocate the increases? I see the three different communities all have a different factor. Is that based on usage or?
yeah, so there's a wonderful formula that Matt uses to,
I don't. I did
Generate
not
a budget?
I did not generate this. This is, 20, 30-year-old agreement.
No, you just put it all in a
I
spreadsheet.
do a calculation. So it's based on equalized value and improvements in call volume. And it was put together that way because it's a combination of, it's a fire and rescue. So for the town of East Troy, they have low rescue call volume, but they have high equalized value, especially in and around the lake. So they want to ensure that they have that, covered from a fire protection standpoint. We have high density, but we have lower call volume for fire than, or in that property value. But we have the schools, we have the senior homes, and again, the denser population. So we're going to have a higher rescue call volume. So as equalized value changes, and then it's an average of those calls over the last full 5 years, that number changes. And so like our numbers, if you look at what we'll have in the 24 budget, for like our rescue costs went up sharply, and that's because our call volume went up very sharply. So it's kind of interrelated. If you really want to know, I'll show you the massive Excel file.
I think I'm good.
All right.
Thank you.
Jim, did that take care of that for you?
Yes, thank you, Jason.
Hey, no problem.
One of these days, I'm going to get rid of that albatross around my neck. Item 2, emergency services budget hearing. Any questions? We kind of touched on that. Okay. Item 3, Booth Lake minutes from August 16th. Any questions for Joe?
I have a question. And Joe, I'm curious, on the back page, I was reading about they're going to move out the raft, or the diving rafts. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, we're considering moving out the buoys. to have-
Okay, I guess, but are you going to move them out? You're not going to go out past 200 feet, right?
We haven't decided yet.
Okay, because I think, I could be wrong. I know I used to set these up at Beulah Beach over on Lake Beulah, but you could have a swim area or a slow and awake up to 200 feet from shore. And I don't know, I don't think you can impede any farther into that. That's why I was asking.
Okay, yeah, I can check on that. I don't know where they're at today, but I know Sean had mentioned that they used to be much further out, so that's what we're looking into.
And you're only looking at 15 extra feet, so, right.
Questions for Joe? Okay. That said, I will make a motion to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 1985 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting of other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require closed session. TID 5 development and TID 4 development agreements and offer to purchase property.
Second.
Roll call vote.
President Johnson?
Yes.
Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Holm? Trustee Nugent? Trustee Renucci? Trustee Smalley? Trustee Wisniewski?